All right, we're rolling, dude. Cheers.
Cheers, man.
Cheers, brother. Thank you for the coffee.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. Let's see. That's good coffee, man.
It's different coffee.
That's good. So I could taste chocolate. Chocolate in there?
Yeah, chocolate's going to be one of the flavor or tasting notes you'll get from coffee most of the time, just because it's being roasted.
Okay.
What makes this coffee different is that we're only roasting natural processed coffee.
Okay.
You know about coffee?
Not so much. You got to educate me a little bit.
All right, cool. This is wicked. Coffee's a fruit.
Okay.
It's a cherry. Each cherry has about 2 or 3 seeds in it. So what we ask, or what we basically work with the farms, is natural processed coffee. They grab the whole cherry, they throw it in the canopy, and it dries under the sun like a raisin. Okay. So all the sugars, the glucose, it impregnates the actual bean. Mm-hmm. And then because we grab that bean, when you roast it, it's let me step back. Because it's sitting on the canopy under the sun, it's fermenting. Mm-hmm. So the fermentation is what gives it like a funky flavor. All beans are fermented.
But I was going to say, all coffee is made that way?
Yeah.
It's the same process.
But most of the ones that we're drinking are washed. So the fermentation happens in water.
Okay.
This one happens within the cherry.
Okay.
So more labor. You got to be careful. It can go bad quickly.
Got it.
And it's usually what you'll find in specialty coffee shops who have pour-overs.
Okay.
So we want the coffee to be a cherry. The cherry to dry under the sun so it gets all the sweets and the acids of that fruit into the bean, and then we roast it.
Got it.
And this is a pink bourbon.
Okay. This is really good, man. It's really it's not acidic.
Yeah. Well,
very smooth.
The acidity and the bitterness will kind of always be there, and the idea there is that it doesn't overpower the flavors of the coffee.
Yeah. Well, it tastes great, man.
Thank you. It's not for everybody. Some people really hate the natural processed
really?
coffee. Oh, yeah.
No, this is really good.
It's a small niche of people who enjoy it.
I guess I'm a coffee connoisseur.
Yeah.
But now I want to talk to you about coffee.
Right on.
But first I want to ask you, do you remember when you caught me, your brother, and Kenny Lang smoking pot at a party when we were like freshmen in high school?
I had to pick you guys up. I had to give you a speech.
Do you remember
I do.
The look on all of our faces when we saw that you were disappointed in us?
I know. Yeah.
Dude, that stuck with me for a long time. I'm like, damn, man, Rob is disappointed at us. He knows football season was coming up. We were smoking weed.
Right.
You got mad at us, man.
I got mad because it was in the season, and it sounds hypocritical because I also smoked. But there was something about my old man. It all started with that.
Yeah.
And that was actually that moment with you
Just
guys.
hold that a little closer to your face, like a fist. Yeah.
So that moment where I had that conversation with you guys, it was my first like fatherly feeling moment.
Yeah.
And I was channeling Dad. So when Dad would talk to me, I never got reprimanded. I never got into trouble. He would just talk to me. And his big speech is like, you walk around like you're an athlete. You think an athlete would do that? So that was what came out.
Yeah.
And then I remember me on purpose not smoking during season. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of cardio, a lot of running. I wanted to start. I mean, I didn't think I was that good of a player. So when you guys, I'm like, all right, it's Kenny, you, my brother. I was like, these guys are big players. These are captains. These are guys showing us, you guys, I'm so disappointed in you. Did we go to McDonald's?
We did go to McDonald's. So I remember, this is the one thing that stands out. We could always talk to Kenny about this too. Every time this story comes up, we were driving and you were giving us your speech and giving us a good talk, right? and a firm one that we all deserved. And we were probably 14 at the time, right? So you were what, 17, 18, something like that? Yeah. And I remember sitting in the back seat with Kenny. And as you were talking, you passed the McDonald's, and both of our heads kind of looked up at the Golden Arch. We looked back at each other like, "Oh man, please stop at McDonald's." And then I think finally you realized that afterwards you were like, "All right, you guys hungry?" And
yeah, right. Because I mean,
so that was the big brother in you.
Yeah, that's it. I almost felt like an obligation to go through that because it's almost a rite of passage. If you realize everything we all go through is almost like a rite of passage, and someone who's older always can go back and refer to, I had that same experience. Here's how it went.
Yeah.
But yeah, which is silly because now if you think about where cannabis is now, all through the work of MAPS.org, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies.
Okay.
That's a big mouthful. That's why they made it into an acronym. MAPS.org, all the research these people have done is what allowed cannabis to now be medicinally accepted and now recreational.
Yeah.
So like back then, and if you think about it, man, weed, It was only legal, the last 50 years? Like our generation's the one generation, or the millennial was the one that was reprimanded for smoking weed.
Yeah, it started in what, like was it the 60s or something?
I think
like
it was
the whole
Reagan or something.
Yeah,
Reagan say no to drugs or something.
Well, weed is a weird one because alcohol is legal. Alcohol fucks a lot of people up, right? And so, like when you look at the effects of weed versus alcohol, I think it's pretty overpowering with what the damage that alcohol can create.
No,
versus weed.
I agree. And Pops ended up dying because of his alcohol consumption as a kid, as a young adult.
Oh wow.
His cirrhosis of the liver is what really pulled him in. He ended up at that point. You can't really heal yourself. The liver is, ready checking out.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah. And if you consider the amount of work that we did as athletes in football, the training, the weightlifting, the double sessions, cannabis, which is a muscle relaxant. Oh, I got a story. Remember when I had a full body cramp? We'll go to that in a little while.
Okay.
I got hospitalized after a game with Carney because I got dehydrated. But back to cannabis, it's a muscle relaxant, it's a vascular dilator, it's anti-inflammatory. Things that you would need. The taboo there is that you're smoking it. You're burning it, you're smoking it. Carcinogen. It's no bueno for you.
Yeah.
But if I was consuming it, I would have not. I don't think I would have had that experience of a full body cramp where the ambulance was brought in. Sean Paterno emptied out his Powerade vending machine, feeding me that stuff, and then massaging my legs from the full body cramp.
Oh my gosh. Wait, so this is after a football game or something?
Yeah, back in high school.
Okay.
Game in Kearney. Yeah.
So after the football game, you just
came out of the bus and just cramped up, fell right on the ground.
Oh shit! Okay.
Yeah, dehydrated. It was nuts.
And you're saying that was because you were smoking weed?
No, I wasn't. I think
because you're okay. You just needed weed after that?
No. I think I got dehydrated, so it's probably going to happen, but it wouldn't have been as severe if I was under cannabis, which it's a muscle relaxant.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
It's anti-inflammatory. It's a vascular dilator. More blood would have flowed through the muscles. It probably would have been my cramp on the calf or my thigh, not my entire body.
Okay.
And then when I went to the hospital, they actually prescribed me muscle relaxants that when I told Sean Paterno, hey, look what they gave me that next Saturday, he grabbed them out of my hands and dumped them in the sink.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Good.
He read what it was. God knows what it was they gave me, which would really have changed my life if I would have actually taken it.
Yeah, who knows, right?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, dude, you have a unique path here, right? And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. Is so first off, why don't you just kind of introduce yourself to the audience, let them know a little bit about you, kind of who you are, a little bit of backstory, so that we could kind of take them through this journey.
Right on. So Rob Ramirez is what most people know me from Union, New Jersey. When I went to school, I'm actually born in Colombia, and we migrated to the United States on the political asylum in a time in Colombia where things were kind of dangerous. And my dad, who is a lawyer or was a lawyer, and started practicing I call street journalism, got himself into trouble, and our lives kind of became in danger. They came around home at gunpoint. We had to evacuate and migrate here on the political asylum. So my name is Nestor Roberto Dario Ramirez Zapata. If you want the full name, right? I mean, I became a citizen in 2010, and now it's just Nestor Roberto Ramirez. But yeah, to your point about my path, my family and I came to the United States in refuge through a traumatic experience that happened. We lived a little bit in Florida, a little bit in California, and we settled in New Jersey, I want to say in the mid-'90s, around the time where I guess I was going to 5th and 6th grade. That's when we moved to Union. And from my perspective, the difficulty of having that experience, being an immigrant, moving around, and having to assimilate the culture from the town that you're in, really made my upbringing a little bit different. I always felt like I never really fit in. Something was always off. I would try to, assimilate some of the things, but then I wouldn't really be brought up on some cultural things. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy per se. But thankfully, the friends that we've made, the people that we've become close to, they kind of carry us along. They are your companions. They're your buddies. So I was very glad and I'm very thankful to have those core group of friends for which we still talk to, hang out, do stupid stuff when we can. But yeah, so then through high school, without really me digging into my past trauma and figuring out, why I think the way I think, I kind of just got on that whole bandwagon of, building your life without really introspectively getting to know who you are. Married my high school sweetheart. We had Rob, got divorced, fell in love with another woman, got remarried. And throughout that whole journey, I found this path of entheogenic substances, psychedelic substances. It was at the time where I wasn't really happy with what I was achieving in life. I mean, I was successful in a sense where I finally got the job that paid a reasonable amount of money that I can now actually consider buying a home. I had recently been married. So I got married, I got the car, I got the money, we're looking for the home, we're thinking about the child. But I couldn't find fulfillment still. And I was always a cannabis consumer, but like a closet cannabis consumer. I'd smoke weed. I would try not to tell people. I go smoke a joint, wash my mouth, take a shower, and then go about my day. Because
which is kind of weird, right? Because like you could have a drink, you wouldn't even think twice about trying to hide that if you were just like, hey, I'm having a casual drink. But weed is like that. There at least there used to be, maybe there is still for some people. But it's like there's that weird stigma to it where you feel like you have to hide it, right?
Yeah,
which is kind of odd.
Yeah, you still kind of do. People smoke cigarettes in front of people,
right?
Right,
which is way worse, right?
Yeah. But I know that need for me to hide was because of the way my parents consider substances in general. I mean, we're not drinkers. Like Dad was, but because that was a problem when he was younger, as in a young adult, he would have alcohol, but he wouldn't really have parties and show people that it's okay to drink publicly. It was one of those things you have for guests to stimulate a conversation. He's a journalist, a poet, political activist.
Right.
And when he was younger, he was actually part of what would be equivalent to the tobacco task force here, or the DEA. So he was actually imprisoning people who were, trafficking drugs outside of Colombia. So he was like, "This is no bueno." So like, I'm not going to show Dad I'm smoking.
Yeah.
But when I had that experience, it alleviated a lot of my other concerns and worries and anxiety about what could happen. There's always this, what's going to happen? I don't know. And my trigger goes to fear, like, it could be bad because of what happened when I was younger and we had to flee. So with cannabis, you kind of get into the culture. YouTube came out. You start reading, listening or watching YouTubes about the culture. And somewhere in there, I became really, really interested in mushrooms. I got really interested in mushrooms. And then partly because I started listening to this gentleman called Terrence McKenna. Rogan talks about him.
I was going to say, I've heard Rogan talk about him a bunch.
Right. And this guy is almost like a poet who uses big words and describes something that he went through that once you kind of experience, you realize it's undescribable. And he did it in such a way that it caused the conflict between what my dad would say, because my dad made sure to have the drug conversation when I was in high school, right? Which is, part of the reason why I was hiding smoking weed. Yeah. And he touched mushrooms, and he said how that would make you go into lunacy. You'll go insane. You'll have to be into psychiatric ward. You'll be putting your whole brain will be put a mess.
That was always the story, right? Like you would have a trip and never come down from it.
You'll never come back.
Right.
It'll never be you, So why would you want to have that
That's
experience?
the shit my mom used to tell me when I was a kid,
I mean,
too.
They're not far. I mean, there's a truth to it, but not in the sense where it's going to be entirely destructive. So anyway, this guy, Terrence McKenna, he talks about it. I start researching. I look up for books. I come across a book about John Allegro, this wordist who starts to talk about how mushrooms could very well be the beginning of the Christian religion and things like that. So then it became a religious thing. I was like, this is brought up in religion in this book. So I started looking up more stuff about that. And I got to the Mayans, and I started finding every ancient civilization or ancient indigenous civilization had some sort of initiatic rite that included a substance that would be used to realign their culture, their society, or someone outside of their society. It's like the medicine man. Everyone has them. So then I started saying, well, which one would be more prominent in my area? if I was Colombian, if I'm in this area, if I was in this, growing up in this time back in the day, and it would be two things. It'd be mushrooms and it'd be ayahuasca, or what we call jahe. Do you know about ayahuasca?
I've heard of it, but educate me.
All right. I don't know if I'm.
There's no ayahuasca in this coffee, is there?
No,
Okay,
no,
good,
no.
good.
But there is a fun fact.
I have shit to do today, bro. Don't fucking poison me here.
Fun fact about the coffee is the coffee's a bush, and this plant is actually related. And I'm not a botanist, so excuse me, but there's a relation to the plant cousin or the genome to the same plant, Psychotra verdis, which is the leaves that is boiled with a root bark in the psychedelic ayahuasca drink. So I find that very curious.
Interesting.
Right. And then, coffee.
So is it the same leaf, or it's just like
it's a different
related?
plant.
It's a different plant.
Like think of it as I don't know, maybe it's not so close as this, but like a cucumber and I'm trying to think of two different vegetables that are somewhat related, like a carrot and a potato.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
They're both like a root vegetable.
They're both a root vegetable.
Yeah.
And they both have similar qualities.
Understood. Yeah.
So I find that very interesting. So anyway, I did this research about what would be more aligned with my base programming. I was brought up in Colombia and I moved to the States. So I was trying to go to like the root, like the center of how I think of the world and all that sort of thing. So it was mushrooms and ayahuasca. Couldn't get ayahuasca in New Jersey. I didn't have any access. No one knows it's illegal. It's in the schedule. Like all the stuff that you need to boil it's illegal. It's like inaccessible. But through that research, I find out that the main active component in ayahuasca is something called DMT, dimethyltryptamine. Back in 2012, Joe Rogan was this, I think, a host, or I guess he was the narrator of DMT, the spirit molecule. It was on Netflix. You can probably Google that and you'll get that. I watched that one too, and I was like, okay, so now he's talking about it. And coincidentally, through my cannabis plug, casual day, I ask about this particular jar that's there, and he goes, it's been there forever. I go, what do you mean it's been there forever? What is it? He goes, it's DMT. I go, what? DMT? Can I try some? He goes, if you want. It's like,
Wait, who are you talking to here?
This is my weed plug.
Your weed guy. Okay.
My weed plug.
At his apartment or something?
At his place where I've always gone. I've slept over. We hung out. This is somebody I've known. We've all known, who will remain nameless. And coincidentally, after all this research and all this thing and effort about finding what thing I can try to have this understanding of who I am, what's this place, what am I here to do, all these questions everybody has, and everybody just kind of has their own path to figure out what that is. I got caught up with the psychedelic side. Like, I think this is something I need to do. I think this is an initiation that I would have encountered if the world wasn't as mixed up as it is.
And this is 10, 12 years ago when you're.
This is, I want to say, 2011.
Okay.
2011, 2012.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and then what compounded that decision of me, I think I need to do this, is also getting caught up in the whole Mayan 2012 ends the day.
Oh, okay. The
remember
world
the
was
calendar
ending, yeah.
right? So and then YouTube was fresh, so
Yes.
conspiracy theories were super heavy, and no one was. And it was more new then than it is now. So at least now you can find the people who debunk stuff, right?
Yes.
You find something in YouTube, you can find the debunking thing.
They had the convincing friggin' documentaries and shit that they would put up
in the
there.
history, in the
Yep.
History Channel, Discovery Channel, oh, guy, come on, this is nuts. So then it showed up in my world after doing all this research and saying this is what I need to try. And what made it interesting to me was because I was so busy and I was chasing the corporate world and I was trying to build my life the way I thought it needed to be built based on the American culture. Mm-hmm. I didn't have much time. You don't have time. You're hustling. You're waking up early. You're doing this. At that time, I think I was training with you. It was a time we just had gotten married. I trained with you before my wedding, right? So I was with the diet, with the menu you've constructed for me.
Yeah.
So I was doing my meals. A lot of turkey, a lot of spinach, turkey, spinach, broccoli, turkey, spinach, broccoli.
It was a very exciting meal plan at the time. We got you lean for your wedding.
Back there, you did. Yeah. You did. Yeah, I gained it all back. We'll talk about that too.
Yeah.
Was this DMT because I only had to commit 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. Apparently, 15 minutes of me being in a place, 15 minutes of me kind of figuring out what just happened, and then being able to, in my mind, functional, be able to go back to do the things I needed to do. So I did it. And I had the near-death experience everybody talks about. Even though I read and I researched and I knew it wasn't going to make any harm to my body, I was convinced, like, all right, the science is proven. Nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
The awkwardness of setting up the way you consume it, which is almost like how you would expect or imagine some person doing crack somewhere in a corner, made it uneasy. Other than that, I was proven there wasn't nothing bad was going to happen. But when it occurred, the next thought in my mind, I was like, I did it. I just killed myself like an idiot for playing around with this stupid thing.
While you're still in the trip. The moment you took it.
When the moment I took it,
Okay.
the experience happened so fast that I was convinced I killed myself.
Wow.
Like I didn't have time to put anything down.
But you weren't even tripping yet.
No, it happened that fast.
So you started that trip like that.
As soon
I've
as-
never done psychedelics at all,
Right.
so this is, yeah.
Yeah, like so when you smoke weed, you'll have like that little brief moment where like you feel that you're getting stoned, and then you're like, oh my God, I'm too stoned, the paranoia, and then okay, I'm okay, I'm cool, I'm having fun. With this, you didn't have time to digest what was happening. It was just immediately you're surrounded with an entirely different environment. Your body's feeling sensations that you are unfamiliar with. And you still feel like it's you having this whole thing that's occurring, which is unsettling because it's so foreign to you that you think you've died. Like, oh, this is what people mean. I'm dead. I've killed myself. And then when you open your eyes and you realize you're breathing, because there's this moment where you don't identify your breath, you think you've killed yourself, you're seeing all these things surrounding you, geometric shapes, colors, things that you give meaning to. And it's like a rickshaw. Is it a rickshaw? A rickshaw puzzle where you see a bunch of blur. Yeah, there's the thing the psychologists used back in the day. They still use
kind of like your shirt.
Kind of like this shirt where like you look at something and you think you see something.
Yeah.
So you're defining all these weird things.
Right.
So it's really like how you see the world. Almost, it's wicked.
Okay.
When that starts to settle and I realize I'm breathing, or you realize you're breathing, when you open your eyes, everything is oscillating. Things are merging with each other. And then slowly you see like the world come back to the way it was. And it's very unsettling. And then like I remember coming back saying, oh my God, like I've been lied to my entire life.
Really?
Yeah, like I've been lied to about everything. Like
what did you feel like you were lied to about?
So you come back thinking you have this grander understanding about how the universe works, which is, be kind to others, be true to yourself, don't tread on others. Like all these basic things that all the religious people talk about, or the religious doctrines cover. But the lie there is there's so many things that are kept unsaid. In other words, this idea of unconditional love, right? It's very hard to apply unconditional love in our current culture. Everything's possessive. So I love you so as long as you meet these requirements that I've now imposed upon myself and you because of my ideology. It's not unconditional. There's conditions in that, right? So I'm like, oh, I've been lied to. Like somebody says they're my friend so as long as I do the following. I meet the customs of that culture, of that group. Right? When I'm with this group, they're jocks. As long as I'm a jock and I don't talk to this guy, I'm cool. If I go to this group, I'm not cool because I'm that jock. It's like this weird dichotomy. Like, oh, I've been lied to. No one really is genuine with each other. Like that's what I felt. Like, oh. And then you start like, analyzing and thinking your own past experience. So that's what's good and that's what you have. But if I didn't do the research and know that I was going to go into a headspace where like Carl Jung talked about the archetypes, like I read a bunch of stuff, dude. Like I read a bunch of stuff because I was really looking to break my head open and figure out why it is I saw the world how I saw it, right? It was a genuine, like I'm looking for my spiritual path. Something's off with me.
Yeah.
And then when I came back, like aside from the disappointment, there was this grand feeling of awe of everything. Everything became new again. So that's what's cool. It was like a rebirth type of thing, right? But a rebirth with a skepticism that I still haven't been able to shake, right? But at the same time, it gave me what I needed, and that is, it's all about narratives, and that's the idea about me thinking that I've been lied to. Like, I don't have to think this way because everyone's thinking this way or because we've thought it for so long. These are all individual narratives that we share, merge, separate, and I get to choose what that narrative is, right?
Yeah. So when you go through this experience, like you come, so it lasts about 15 minutes. You said,
It was
right?
15 minutes of heavy where you think you've killed yourself and
Right.
you're transcending
Right.
your reality.
Now I could imagine how hard it is to describe what that experience is like, right? Because it's this indescribable experience.
Right.
So with that being said, is there, like, I'm just trying to get a better understanding as someone who has never taken it. When you start to get back to the trip goes away, you're back to normal, so to speak. How do those lessons stick with you? Like, how does that? Because it's like, all right, my only experience of being high is marijuana, right? And when you're high, you're high. And by the way, I haven't smoked weed in a long time just because I stopped when I was a kid. But from what I could remember, you'd get high, you're having a good time, you're laughing, you're fucking around, you're doing what you got to do. And then that kind of goes away and it's like, all right, here's life, right? So how is it different when you do like a psychedelic trip and you have that type of experience versus just like smoking a joint, getting high, and then getting sober, or any other drug, Coke or whatever?
I think the key there is that we weren't taught these tools that existed for such a long time that we don't know how to use these tools.
The tools being the drug,
the weed, the drug,
Okay.
even the alcohol. There's cultures that did their spiritual work with alcohol, you know, and so these things aren't social things. You're not supposed to drink and get distracted or smoke and get distracted or take the mushrooms and then get distracted. You're supposed to experience, right? It brings you closer to in the moment because now you've altered something and you have to pay attention just a little more because something's off. So to answer your question, for someone who's never had it, and how is this going to help you be able to address certain things, the DMT will break your mind to think that there's narratives, but this is when the shaman or people talk about vision quests, where they go to a trusted place and they dedicate like a month maybe, where it's the 1 week of detoxifying, 1 week of eating clean, another week of fasting, and then you have 3-4 experiences that then gets shared almost like in a round table. It's called integration. And when you do it the right way with the right substance, which is the traditional method of having these two things boil and you drink it as a drink in a community sense, sitting down in the darkness, like you do it the right way, which I got a chance to do it in the Amazon, so we can talk about that.
Yeah.
You get transported to memories. You relive a memory or an experience that feels like a memory, and for me, it replays, and you have to act a certain way for you to be able to like beat the level. I've achieved, okay, this level is me having this experience. What if I do this? Oop, no, Groundhog Day. If I do this, I do this, if I do that.
This is while you're in the experience.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, so that's the right way.
Yeah.
So like the whole DMT or smoking the joint, hang out with your friends, or take the microdose of mushrooms and go to a party, that's not a spiritual experience. What you're doing is, these are all enhancers. Small doses of psilocybin or psychedelics is the same as a dose of Adderall. You hone in, you're super focused because something's different.
Right.
So it's about attention. So now you're going to go watch your band a little more attentive. You know,
Right.
you're going to feel, your friends, no sweat, you're dancing. It's different. You're distracting.
Right.
The vision quest, seeking the places. Tulum has one. Tulum is now legal. Costa Rica has places. Me and my partner went to South America and, in Colombia. I forgot the name of the little town. Anyway, it's by the Amazon. We went there, found a shaman. Our story is a little more questionable, but if you do it the right way, and it's no sex, no meats, nothing fermented, No alcohol. You're
For how
drinking
long?
water for 7 days
7
before
days?
you even go into the fast, because you're supposed to be in an empty stomach for at least 48 hours before you take it. And then you take it and you have explosive diarrhea or throw up. I didn't have any of that, which was bizarre. I think part of it's because I took it seriously and I was super clean for a good time.
Okay. But that's why they say that you'll either puke or have diarrhea because whatever is inside, like whatever you're holding on to or something or is it just like the food that you're eating? Like what's
The purge explained by these people, these shamans or the ayahuasqueros, it's layers. So you'll purge spiritual toxins, you'll purge physical toxins, you'll purge historical toxins, things that your ancestors, old things. So they have layers. For me, when I've done it several times, I know that when I was really in it and I followed the rules, I didn't have any negative effects of diarrhea or throwing up. So I was clean, and the experiences were comforting, warm dreams that seemed so real. And the only weird thing or uncomfortable was this test of me showing an action that I was supposed to show to move on. And it was always compassion.
okay?
So like right there, like one of the things I struggle is, as much as I talk about it, is compassion. I have very short temper and patience for things and people who don't make the effort to find out things or document themselves, things like that. And I see it now more in my son because I know he's a kid, so he doesn't know any better. And he does something that I know. There's this little small trigger like, dude, he should know. I was like, how should he know if he's a kid? So little things like that.
Okay.
So the compassion. Yeah, so if you do it the right way, in the right set and setting, you'll feel protected, you'll be clean, you'll have someone to guide you, and the guiding is really just breathing in case you have a bad memory that you keep replaying because you're not willing to face it. I've been in circles where people have had experiences of terror because they've been exposed to sexual abuse. And that's where it gets uncomfortable. If you're in a group of people and they're going through really traumatic experiences, that takes you out of your experience. And then you're now what they call holding space. You're here present, hoping that they can achieve what they can achieve. And they're screaming, it's yelling. It could be wicked. On the flip side, I've had ones where there's been nothing but laughter and giggling, and everybody's super happy and thankful, and it's almost like a reward. So what defines these moments and these experiences, a good one and a bad one? The things you've done in the past, the small imprints you've made on your mind based on actions, lies, truths, all that. And there's that moment of cleanse where you can forgive yourself if you've done things that you shouldn't have. You have a list of things you should do to apologize or make things better. Or if you've been a good boy, you get rewarded with this euphoria nirvana, this place of grandeur, love, and affection without stories. And I think the problem is people seeking not insights, but fixes.
Yeah.
Right? Like
It's not a quick fix.
we all look for quick fixes. Weight,
Right.
energy, attention, like whatever can make us not have to put all the effort that we probably should, we'll seek, I think, as creatures.
So when you go through these experiences, this is almost like a gateway to the subconscious, like a way to tap into thoughts, memories, traumas that maybe you don't think about on a conscious level.
Yeah, that you try to distract yourself, right? Like in this, because you're now there, you're a moment, you can't run away from it.
Right.
You can't. You got to confront it.
So I'm assuming that this is part of the reason why they use, I don't know if they use ayahuasca, but I know they use psilocybin, right, for people with PTSD and things like that. Is that basically how that works? Like they're basically helping them tap into those experiences to bring it back to the surface so they could then work on it?
Yeah.
Like, is that, okay. Just trying to understand how this affects the brain and what this is, what experience they're going through and what they get after that experience.
Yeah. So the ones you're talking about, psilocybin, I think those are psychotherapy, assisted psychotherapy, where you go, there's a doctor, you had several sessions, you have discussions, then you have your moment of all right, you come into the office, you'll have a setting, you'll put, headphones, you cover your eyes, you'll be given a dose and a pill.
Mm-hmm.
And
They microdose that, or is it?
No.
Oh, so they're going full blast.
Yeah, so I mean, it's science, right? So they'll get your weight, they'll figure out what your limit should be. I mean, there's so much, in psilocybin, there's so much of it that can actually be digested, like before your body's no longer absorbing it,
Yeah.
So, and you have this experience, and then you talk about it. What did you see? What did you feel? Let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
When I say that out loud, I have to say, I think of the individuals who are on the camp of, you don't need psychedelics to sit there and talk about it. And you're right. I mean, for anybody who wants to be an adult, who's capable, has been able to become an adult, right? Because not everybody's an adult. You can be 50 years old and still be a child.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, if you're willing to face your shadows or your demons as an adult, then you certainly don't need any of this junk. But the culture's become so toxic. Some people don't know who they are. They don't know themselves. They don't know why they do the things they do. They're just on.
Yeah.
Right. And that will shake you enough to stop and be like, whoa, what's going on? Right. A little extreme, but.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many experiences, memories that we suppress that people actually forget, right? There's extreme cases like that where something is so buried and so deep that you may need something like ayahuasca or psilocybin in order to bring those memories back to the surface so you could then work on them. Because if it's so deep and it's so buried that you actually cannot recall on those memories, you need something to get that out and bring that to the surface, right? So you could then work on it. Yeah. But that's really interesting stuff, man. And so how did these experiences help you personally? You said you became, you at least recognized that compassion was the thing that you need to work on.
Yeah.
How else has it helped you? Because you started that and experimenting with stuff like this back in 2011, 2012. Yeah. So now this is 12 years ago, right. 12 years in the making now. What kind of progress have you made? What kind of changes? How do you kind of see the world differently? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in the last 12 years, you almost kind of relive these moments that you had under psychedelics to determine how you should act in the moment that you're currently present. So someone who can be a little too anxious, if I'm feeling this anxiousness at a certain time, I can tap into those moments and be able to say, well, what are you feeling? I get my inner voice loud enough for me to process what's going around. And it could be like, oh, dude, you haven't eaten in the last 8 hours. Go get something. Oh, I got to eat something. Right? But these moments where you can pause and say, what is it that I'm feeling and thinking? And what am I willing to do about that thought or that feeling? Do I have to act? Do I have to process it? Do I have to sit? So those being more in the moments and be more in the moment in moments of need, I think has helped. What it hasn't helped, it almost amplified my misunderstanding or lack of understanding of how certain cultural camps grab onto their cultural ideologies. Right, so it's opened my mind enough to be more tolerable and acceptance of other cultures or ways of thinking. So when I travel, I used to travel and be anxious about, okay, it's gonna be different. Now I'm like, I travel and I'm like, it's gonna be so different. It's a different perspective. So I can say it aligned my perspective to kind of always look at things in the glass half full, but yet there's still this little unsettling feeling about why can't others be that way? Right? Why can't others be as open, right? So I don't like that because that's still almost closing myself off of not being fully tolerable of what people want to
judging.
Right? Yeah, right. So, but I think to kind of summarize what it has been helpful for me is just be more introspective. I mean, be more aware of myself, be more aware of others, and know that this is a process we're all going through different times of our lives, and the idea is to be collaborative. Right, like the universal law of how does nature function? They're collaborative. Everything has a purpose, a function. No one's fighting to have the better function, the better purpose. We're all in the moment, in the present, connected, trying to do what we're supposed to do for everyone at 60 type of thing. You know?
Got it.
So
how? Let me ask you this then, because you've tapped into entrepreneurship over the years. Have these experiences helped you make a shift in your career? Is that why you ended up going down this path, or how did you get into it?
All right. So entrepreneurship has been for the last 5 years, and it's been us essentially a proof of concept. We stumbled upon this entrepreneurship. My past experiences, I think, have prepared me for the uncertainty of what would be now fully dedicated to the business of coffee, the industry in coffee. I have been in corporate America for over 20 years, business process outsourcing, specifically to the telecommunication industry in call center and customer support. What that means is I would launch, train, manage, and sometimes close down call centers overseas for the telecommunications industry. First was cable companies. First it was IT consulting, then became cable companies, and then finally it was with T-Mobile Wireless. So I would always leverage my idea of compassion, my idea of tolerance, my idea of being present in the moment, of facilitate and collaborate through my corporate work, which is why it afforded me progression. I would get promoted, companies would be acquired, I'd be kept, that sort of thing. COVID happened, and with COVID, we saw a need in our home. Because we've traveled so much, because of the remote job that I had, and I was having to be able to go to all these places, I would drink a lot of coffee in some pretty cool places, and I tried some pretty outstanding stuff. So what was once a hobby and an interest of mine, of more of a consumer, when COVID hit in 2019, 2020, we didn't have any coffee. Coffee shops closed. I couldn't travel. We were locked up in Buffalo. I mean, we were.
Why are you in Buffalo?
So at the time, my wife and I were in Vancouver, and the idea was to travel some of Canada. And then when they started closing the borders, we had to come back, but I couldn't come back to my house because my father was elderly with cirrhosis. And my mom was like, what are we going to do?
Just hang out in Buffalo.
So you got an Airbnb. And the idea of picking Buffalo was because we were generally entertaining the idea of moving up there for a little while.
Oh, shit.
We scoped it out, and COVID kind of derailed all these plans that we had. So,
okay.
I don't know why I mentioned Buffalo. Where were we?
You said you were locked up in Buffalo. There was a need for coffee. You didn't want to go home, so you stayed there.
Yeah. And then, so my wife, before she married me and decided to kind of follow me here to New Jersey for the next few years, used to work for an export company in Colombia. She's the one that got us access to like direct farm, direct trade, like really high-end specialty coffee. That's where she was working. She was the digital marketer for this company, and she befriended these people, and they had access. So we started talking. And one day in Buffalo, after watching Game of Thrones, drinking beer, we're like, oh, what are we going to do? We got no coffee tomorrow. I was like, hey, it would be cool if we can just roast our own coffee. And then I went on Amazon, and then there was this Caldi 300-gram roaster. We bought it, and then she made the call and got some green beans, and then we started playing. And then we got coffee that we loved, and then we stopped buying coffee. And then my friends and family were like, well, we probably should sell this coffee. And then we looked at each other like, okay, maybe we should do it. And that's when we decided to. The idea is we're all locked up. It'd be cool if we get to a place where no one has to leave their home to get specialty coffee that tastes good. And because we got so caught up with that little world of pour overs and the ritual of coffee and this tasting like that and this tasting like plums, and there's it was at that time a small group of people into that industry. Now it's big. Like everybody's into pour overs and natural and anaerobics and kogi beans. It's wicked, this place. We decided to create Pucker Punch Coffee. Pucker Punch Coffee, the idea is like, what are the benefits of the natural processed coffee? Well, it's the coffee in its purest form. It's not being washed, right? It's Allow it to dry, you get all the flavor of the coffee. Okay, well, what are the benefits? You require to employ more people because you need people to turn these cherries around so they don't get all vinegary and get fermented.
Right.
What else? You don't use as much water, so there's like less water usage. And then we found out that the traditional washing of coffee provides water that is untreatable and it's being thrown into rivers. And then these coffee farmers don't know why the beans or their harvest is going south. Like, and then we're like, oh, it's an environmental thing. Like, holy shit, let's do this. Like, it's a space no one's focusing on that is beneficial not only to the person who wants to drink coffee that is not moldy, that is fresh, that has flavor, that's not burnt, because carcinogens are in burnt stuff. Like if you're burning stuff, that's a carcinogen, right? So, like let's get into this. And that's what we did, and we created a website. We had a combination of share roasting facilities, asking coffee shops to let us use their roaster. We managed to now have a roaster, a repurposive shed. We've requested our cottage license to be able to have our roasting facility in-house.
Okay.
So it's super cool. Instead of having to pay for someone else to do it for us, which that means the customers, can now get a cheaper, more high quality bean, some better value proposition. And then in the mix of all this, my sister and my brother-in-law, who are health conscious individuals, and I should say I'm health conscious, but I haven't fully dedicated myself to health. I'm still somewhere else. They like, can you get decaf that tastes better? And we're like, I think we can. So we basically the same thing. So we grab these beans that are farmed in a certain way, and then we looked for clean decaffeination processes. Clean means no chemicals.
Yeah, I was going to say, when regular decaf coffee, what do? They treat it with chemicals to remove the caffeine?
Yeah, so it's chemicals, synthetic chemicals in labs to be able to extract the caffeine. Not everybody's doing it. It's something that's what really began decaf. And then you had those stories of decaf being proven to cause cancer, I think like in the 60s and 70s. And then decaf never tasted right, and it's just kind of one of those things that people default to when they can no longer have caffeine, and they still want the feeling of they're drinking a hot, bittery coffee.
Yeah.
But now you can go to places, and if you ask what kind of decaf they have, they'll probably say like EA, which is ethyl acetate. There's two different types of ethyl acetates. One is synthetic lab. You want to ask, is that by sugarcane? Sugarcane byproduct means that the sugarcane plantations, which are in Colombia because they have a lot of sugarcane, all the byproducts allowed to ferment, and then they create this ethyl acetate mixture. So it's an organic version, so it's clean. But the best decaf you can find is the Swiss water process.
Okay.
And they do it with a coffee extract, and it's just water. So they grab a bunch of green beans, and they soak in water. So then the green extract is in the water, and they use that water to decaffeinate the bean.
Got it.
And you get like almost 100%. It's 99.9% decaf.
Okay.
So we grabbed these beans that were specialty, high grade, that everybody is paying like $15 for a brewed cup at a coffee shop. And we figured out that they also have them in Swiss water or sugarcane process. And that's where we're focusing on. So now we have this natural process. It's healthier. It's, nothing's roasted until it's ordered. And if you're caffeine conscious, you got another option from half calves to just full decafs of these coffees that taste remarkable. Like there's specialty roast, there's specialty beans.
This cup that you just gave me, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, this is really good.
It's different.
This is really delicious. So this was the caffeinated
That's
one,
caffeinated
right?
Pink bourbon. We call that the lit prophet, and it's a pink bourbon.
A pink bourbon.
And that basically means like the Arabica plant has been crossbred in so many ways that there's different varieties, and each variety is either more delicate or more robust. And that's the pink bourbon. It's a bigger bean. It's a bigger cherry, I should say. It's oval. It's juicier.
Yeah.
A little more meaty, so you get a different flavor.
Delicious, dude. Really good stuff.
Right on. Thanks,
really
man.
good stuff.
Appreciate
it.
Yeah. And to full circle this idea of me getting caught up with coffee after COVID and us not being able to find coffee shops, it wasn't until about 3 months ago that I was reading this idea of the coffee plant being a descendant or relative of the Psychedelics verdis plant, which is the one used in ayahuasca.
Yeah, so Now, what does that actually mean, though? Is there a similar effect on the brain by having that? Like
I don't think it's like a similar effect on the brain. I think what's curious or interesting to me is that humans will forever be surrounded with psychoactive substances that they, in one point in time, started using for a reason and have since forgotten it. Like
right.
Dunkin' Donuts, and I hate to call them out, but the more industrial coffee, like because they're moving so much, they have antifungal, they got all these things, fillers. It's part of the industry. If you want to provide a lot of product for a lot of people, there's things you have to do to be able to do it. You know, like that's why I'm big on go small, go to your town coffee shop. You know, these people are going to the farms, getting to know who's picking it. It's a big process. But all those industries, they use all these chemicals, antifungals,
pesticides, herbicides.
And then because it has to be accessible at a supermarket, and I love supermarkets because they're super convenient if you got one. If you're not in one of those desert towns that doesn't have supermarkets, another issue altogether. These things are on shelves for like ever. Yeah. Ever, bro. So they get moldy, man.
Right.
No matter how many stuff you put in there, you know.
Even with I mean, not only are you getting the pesticides and the what do you call it, the antifungals and all that stuff, but then you get mold on top of it because it's still going to grow because it's sitting on the shelf for that long, right?
Now take a look at what's happening in the cannabis industry. Like so the coffee is like the first drug that now it's everywhere and it's industrialized. Now you had the beer, alcohol is now being industrialized, and it's no longer the home moonshine that your great great grandfather knew how to do from the great 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 grandfather that taught him. You got the cannabis industry now with the medical regulated, which is a good thing to have. Sometimes you got mold situations with these buildings, but then you got the fake stuff, the stuff that's being sprayed. You got the hemp, and it's like a lot of industry trying to make money.
Right.
Where I think the only way these substances are good to you or good for you is if you know where they come from, the intent, how you're using them, how they're being, like the whole thing, like from, sounds corny, like from seed to plate type of thing, from seed to cup. So that's what I find interesting, that coffee now is everywhere, which if you... I hate to go this way. So coffee apparently was going to be shut down by the Catholic Church, by a pope, because it was a Muslim drink.
Really?
Right. So
so when is this? Like we're talking
back in the day, dude. I'm not even sure. I got caught up in like the history of coffee, and it blew my mind on how controversial coffee was like millennia ago. Like it was a big like taboo to have coffee. I think some people, and this is a YouTube video, and I hate to say that. I hope I'm right saying this, but some YouTubers that I caught up in attribute the French Revolution to coffee because men started to frequent at coffee shops over pubs. So they inadvertently sobered up. And then they had this idea of coffee makes you talk. So then they're talking, it became political, it became this thing. And then you have people kind of like rise up. Coffee.
Okay. Yeah,
right? So you have like the coffee started somehow, became something, it became industrialized. I see that with cannabis. Now you can, in some states, you can get chocolates, mushroom chocolates that are psilocin. So synthetic extractions in a lab instead of the actual method, right? So I find that interesting. And I wonder and I ask myself if, let's look 100 years from now, are people going to have like their ayahuasca like shot because the coffee is no longer doing it for them?
Right.
You know, how far are we going to take all these substances that are tools that we're just going to either monetize, exploit, overconsume?
Overconsuming is a big one, right? Because, like, even when you hear about kids taking mushrooms, they're not trying to heal, trauma that they've experienced. They're just eating a shit ton of mushrooms and they're getting fucked up, right? And I think that's just in our nature. We overeat food, we overconsume alcohol, we overconsume drugs. It's just part of human nature. So I think the answer to that is, that's probably where it's going to go if they keep, because. So there's the good and the bad of legalization, right? You just named a lot of the bad. Right. The good might be that at least to some degree, depending on a company, that there's no fentanyl. There's no,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like the shit like that you might be getting on the street. Now, I don't know if they're finding fentanyl in fucking mushrooms, right? But we know that they're finding that in coke all over the world, right? And that's becoming a big thing. So it's just interesting. Yeah, I think that, but it seems like the best way to do this stuff is what you were just saying. Like you go to a shaman or you do something like that, or you have an experience with somebody who knows what they're doing. Like if you're really using this stuff to try to heal something or try to improve your life in some way, shape, or form, like get it from somebody that you know is legit somehow.
Yeah,
right?
and I would argue that it should definitely be like the last resort. Like I was 30 years old, bro. I've had 30 years old and all I had is cannabis.
Yeah.
Oh, 30 years old and I was mainly cannabis, but right before I had access and I started digging down into the psychedelics, there was a 1 year stint of me over consuming coke, just in the circles that I was in.
Okay.
That was a problem. Interesting fact, I haven't had an appetite ever since because of that psychedelic experience. And
Oh, an appetite for coke.
for any
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I thought you meant you haven't have an appetite for food after all the coke you
What?
did. Yeah.
I can eat. So like this goes back to the proper uses that perhaps the medical field can provide us is these individuals who've overconsumed certain substances, sugar, caffeine, alcohol, cocaine, whatever it is, that heroin, that through these mind altering substances, they can break out of that threshold, and get
Go ahead,
past
sorry.
it. Yeah. So.
Well, I was going to say, because typically if you're over using coke or overeating, whatever, food, alcohol, sex, gambling, you're probably just trying to distract yourself from something, right? And so if you go through those experiences, it would make sense that if you actually do heal the thing that is making you use the drug or overeat the food to try to numb yourself or get that dopamine hit, it makes total sense, right?
Yeah, and in controlled areas, because here's the other thing too. When you come out of those places or those moments of like mind shattering, I think I figured out all my problems, you're very susceptible to other people's ideologies as well. Like, so like if you didn't do your research and you're like, what the hell is this? I feel liberated. I look at things differently. And you go and ask the person on your left, what's going on? And then they're on some other shit. Like they're talking.
Well, that's how cults start. Right?
That's how cults start,
yeah.
right? Like you get caught up on some other mess, So
Yeah.
like that, I think that's where the dangers of psychedelics is to society as a whole, and perhaps why it's been capped. It's not so much what it does to you as an individual, it's how susceptible you now are after. There's a window where you're absorbing information like you just can't imagine, and you'll grab onto something that's false. Right?
Yeah.
Like you'll grab on something that's not beneficial to you or anybody else, and then
Yeah. That's completely, well, not off topic, but, and I don't know all my facts on this, but I believe that's what the CIA did with Charles Manson.
Oh,
Have you heard about it?
I heard about the CIA
using acid. Yeah.
Well, that was the thing. The thing that they were using is that acid. He used acid to brainwash. Like, there was the big, like, what do they call it? It was a CIA mind ultra, something like that.
What is it called? Yeah. MK Ultra.
MK Ultra. Yeah.
Dude, that's wild stuff, man. Because they were saying a lot of those people that were doing these horrific murders, they didn't even have like a criminal record. These were just like people that were not violent. They didn't have records, but they were fucking brutally murdering people. It's like, how do you get someone to buy into that idea and fucking do that? Yeah. It's like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I can admit to one thing that happened to me that took me a while. And it's because you come back from that experience doubting what's real. It's in that doubt is really unsettling for people, and they can go down a rabbit hole that's like dangerous.
Yeah.
But if you've already been kind of a skeptic about reality as a general, then you know that it's just reassuring you that it's all about different narratives. No matter where you are, a group of people have decided these rules of engagement, and this is what you got to do. Like, when you act in India is how they act. And,
right.
If you're going to Europe, this is how they act. If you go to South America, in America, this is how we act.
Yeah.
But that what's like it's so real when you're over there. Like when you're over there in that psychedelic space, deep in it, like it's so real. It almost feels more real than this. That's why people come back saying like, "Oh, I'm a soul, live in a body, whatever." Like they get really spiritual because it's unexplainable. But I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to being in that space and coming back, not knowing what's real and being unsettling, you come back and you start wanting to educate yourself on more topics. There is this hunger, this appetite for like, okay. What I just saw, I've read all this, and there's got to be something. And you start looking. There was a short time, and I found Alex Jones. I never heard of this dude. I came back from this massive, mind-blowing experience taking the drug, and this guy is yelling at me about all these things. And he's like, "They're lying to you, InfoWars." I'm like, "Oh my God, yeah, they're lying to me."
Yeah.
Right, and thankfully there was this moment where he just got too crazy with the shooting over in
Connecticut.
In
right?
Connecticut,
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, but what if he didn't mention that? If I would have kept going down that rabbit hole and affirming what he's saying and it wasn't so much exactly what he was saying. It was just some other person thinking almost what I'm thinking, like there's something off here. Right. But this offness isn't planned. It's just there's so many of us and with so many different narratives trying to achieve so many things that we think we each have to achieve. It's just this big massive society, you know, and that's why you have these guardrails. Society has the best guardrails, and I think in the States you got one of the best guardrails. Like shit hits the fan, you have all these organizations that are for profit, yes, that maybe some will argue need to be funded by government. I say no. That would help other people, like the guardrails of even a policeman. Like some people look at policemen like they're gonna kind of like be the party pooper. They're gonna mess it up. They're gonna ruin my life. But that policeman is a guardrail for something that you don't want to experience. You know, some extreme stuff. It's not like we're out, you know, in the wilderness like cavemen. Right. You know, like we got a place to sleep. We got a place to eat. You know, if you're homeless, there's still places that can facilitate some of that. It's not optimal, right? But it's these societal guardrails are great to have, and the dangers is when you have doubts and you start listening to other aggressive, dangerous ideologies, then you can then inadvertently break these guardrails society has spent so many years putting up.
Yeah.
It's not great, but it's better.
Yeah. Dude, awesome. And let me ask you, as I saw you brought a bag here, so we got some.
I brought the two bags.
Goodies, right?
I left it over there. Yeah, let me get it.
No, I got it.
You got it?
Yeah, hang on.
Yeah, let me show you. I'm super.
So let's see what we got here.
Thank you so much. All right, so the first bag is what really got me into the industry here, or got me into the coffee. It's our Parker Punch. When we created this brand, we wanted to be bold. We wanted to be suggestive. We wanted to kind of let the title speak for itself, right? The coffee is so fruitful. It could be acidic in certain different varieties. So the experience is going to punch you in the face, right? And then this tagline about we worship the coffee gods, which is kind of how we go. It's about the ritual. Like we want people to experience coffee like we experience. I mean, I wake up, the first thing I'm doing a pour over on a Chemex. It's taking me like 15 minutes to make a cup of coffee for 3 people. Like, and everybody's like, oh, the smell. It's like this whole ritual that comes out of it. And you're worshiping not the bean or some astral, some fictitious god. The idea here, the coffee gods are really the people growing it. Right. The amount of people who are enslaving themselves to get us a $15 cup at some fancy coffee shop, right? These people are humble people, and that's how that begun. So Parker Punch, it's flavorful, and we worship these people who allowed us to experience this coffee in this form.
And this is what I just had, right?
That's what you just had.
Yeah,
that's
this
the lit
is
profit.
really good.
Yeah,
so that's Parker Punch right there.
ParkerPunchCoffee.com for the caffeine if you want to get lit.
There you go. And believe me, there's a good amount of caffeine in there. No?
So fun fact, if you're looking for a really load of caffeine, go for lighter roasts. The more you roast the coffee, the volume increases, so less matter in your grind. And like anything, if you overcook it, it's going to evaporate, right? So light roasts fits more beans in your cup, and it's more caffeine in the bean.
Yeah, everybody thinks that dark roast is stronger, but light roast, got it. All right, so Parker Punch.
puckerpunchcoffee.com.
Puckerpunchcoffee.com
Yeah.
for that. That's delicious.
And look at this, baby. So we got Orbital decaf coffee. Now,
I like the design on this, man.
right, it's wicked, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
The idea with this one is that Orbital Command is extraterrestrials got some concerning messages from jittery humans, and they're providing these jittery humans with jitter-free fuel. Orbital
Got it.
decaf coffee. What I've given you is a half calf, though, because I know you're a caffeine guy. And
Yeah.
and listen, we all have our rituals. Some love coffee. I have 4 cups of coffee probably before 4 o'clock comes, and I need to wean off. And I'll go to the half calf, and then in the evening I'm drinking decaf in the laptop, burning the midnight oil. So
Yeah.
I've given you a half calf. It's a Rwanda bean with the Colombian bean. Both are natural. Well, one's a pink bourbon, and the other one is a caturra. So what that means is, and this is Swiss water process. So it's the best balance offering that we have with caffeine. Say if you want to put milks, alternative milks, sugars, if you want to make a drink, if you want to make a bulletproof coffee, that one's the one that tastes best.
Okay.
If you go to the really funky ones and you start adding things, it can taste pretty weird.
Okay.
So that's why
So
I
this
gave
is
that to
one you could put a drop of cream in there or something
Anything.
like that. Okay.
Anything. It's super balanced. Again,
Got it.
half calf, Rwanda, and a Colombian bean, and the decaffeination Swiss water process.
Okay. Now, how much caffeine is in half calf?
So literally half of the caffeine. So
Yeah.
the only way I can tell you what the caffeine is if I sent that roast to get tested for caffeine
okay.
properties. So this one, when you hear half calf, it's basically they'll grab, if the bag is 340 grams, right? They'll grab half of it of this bean with caffeine, and they'll mix it with a decaf.
Okay.
So that's all
Got it.
half calf really means. I can't tell you the exact
How many milligrams of caffeine?
milligrams
What
per
about this
caffeine.
one? Do you know?
No, we haven't
Okay.
gotten any of our beans tested post roast profile.
Got it.
Maybe something worth doing and include it.
I don't know.
That'd be fun
Maybe.
to do,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Include a little
Yeah.
MG. This bean at this roast now has this much
So
caffeine.
you know
in
how
it
much
per
caffeine.
cup.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. So this is the one I just had now. Both of these, no herbicides, pesticides,
Nothing.
fungicides, nothing
Yeah.
like that.
Direct trade, chemical free. Now we can't say that we're organic, but all our farmers use organic practices. They don't have the funding. Or have the will, frankly.
Okay.
They'd rather invest the money into their own farm practices than getting the certification. But the Colombian Coffee Association, at the very least, for our coffee beans, they do demand some strict practices for specialty grade coffee. And specialty grade coffee just basically means that the Specialty Coffee Association has cupped it and grades it above like 80%. And we only buy coffees that are 85 or above.
Got
So
it.
it's
Awesome. And what did you say the website was for this one?
So orbitalcoffee.com for the Orbital decaf.
Okay.
IGs or at Orbital decaf, and then Pucker Punch Coffee. So orbitalcoffee.com for the decaf, and then for the regular, it's Pucker Punch Coffee.
There we go.
And in fact, we are officially launching in 2 weeks. So.
Oh, this isn't even launched yet.
Nah.
Okay.
So the only way you can get
The Orbital is not launched.
Yeah, the Orbital's not launched. The only
Okay.
way you can get access to that is if you go to our website, you sign up, you get a newsletter. We'll send you an email on where we're going to be because we were here at Bellworks a couple weeks ago, and we're going from fair to fair to show the coffee.
Oh, awesome, man. So, all right. So that's orbitalcoffee.com. I will be sure to subscribe and get on the list, man,
Get
for
in
sure.
there. Yeah.
Rob, this was really awesome, man. Definitely appreciate you taking the time
brother.
to come
I know
out,
we
man.
talk a bunch of stuff, right? A
I
little bit
know.
all over the place.
No, that's all good, man. It was definitely a great combo. But yeah, the coffee's great, guys. So make sure you head over, check at least one of these out because the coffee really was delicious. And if you have more, I'm gonna
I gotta
have
drink
you
some
fill me
too.
up a little bit more too.
Right on.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much for coming on, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We will catch you next week on another episode of the Iron Life Podcast. Peace.
Later.